computer game. But sight, touch, taste, hearing, smell, they only exist in the brain. The five senses take vibrational information, classic is the ear, but they all do. They turn that information into electrical information, same stuff, different form, and they send it to the brain. And the brain then constructs this physical world, which is not physical at all. This physical world we think is out here only exists in our constructed reality. And that's why the manipulators are very happy for us to think that we can find answers to problems out there, because there is no out there, and they know we'll never find answers to problems out there. They have to be from in here, because that's where it's all being constructed. So they said in the Matrix, in that interchange, this isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Yes, that's all it is. This world exists when we decode it from vibrational and electrical into apparently physical. And we do this decoding within a tiny frequency range. We call this the world. Oh, it's a big world. Well, it may look a big world, but actually it's a tiny frequency range. Of the mass matter that scientists, even mainstream scientists, and they'll find there's a lot more, mind, say exist in this universe now, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what they say exists. Dark matter, all that stuff. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that our eyes to decode and send information to the brain from, is a fraction of the 0.005%. We're basically blind to what exists in the space that we are experiencing. It's just a tiny frequency range. And the lack of knowledge of this, the identification with the vehicle that decodes that frequency range and constructs our reality, the identification with that being us has put us in the boxes that we live in. Who are we? Well, we're supposed to be humans, but we're not. That's an experience. It's not a me, it's not an I, it's not an us. It's an experience. It's basically a software program, as I'll get to. We are consciousness having that experience. But what the manipulators have done, since they hijacked this reality, or this part of it, is to convince us that we are our experience. Imagine being on the moon and someone gets on to Houston and says, "Hey, Houston, we got a problem. Joe thinks he's his spacesuit." Joe thinks it's his spacesuit? What's he talking about? Of course he's not. He's the one inside it. Humanity thinks it's its spacesuit. And we're encouraged to believe that from cradle to grave. We are multi-level consciousness, multi-level awareness. On some levels it can be filmed now, the energy, the auric field. This is my mother. She died a few years ago. And I had an experience on the day that she was buried or cremated that really hit me and allowed me to see the difference between the body and who we are. I was asked if I wanted to go to the funeral parlour on the morning of the funeral by my brother and see my mother in the open coffin. And I said, no, I normally, instantly, no, I remember her as she was. She's gone now anyway. But something said to me, go. So I said yes for the first time ever. And I went along and I walked in this room, and there was my mother in a coffin, and she was so dead it was unbelievable. I know it's an obvious thing to say, but I was taken aback. I've never seen anything as lifeless as that body, and it was stone cold. Right next to it, on a chair, my brother had got this big blown up photograph of my mother, which was going to be used at the funeral. So I'm standing there in this room. There's my mother's body, dead, unbelievably so. There is my mother's picture, and that was alive. That was alive. The energy, the sparkle in the eyes, life force. That is who we are. And that's what had left my mother. That's what leaves when we all so-called die. And therefore the body, the computer system, just loses its life force. That's why it's so dead. Near-death experiences, galore, and people have had them. Millions of them have told the story of leaving the body, often going down a tunnel, and meeting beings or people who've gone before them and stuff like that. And this is what one of them said, a near-death experiencer. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation, of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That is who we are. That is what is having the experience that thinks it's Ethel Flippin Jones. So we are experiencing through the body, and we are energy, consciousness, having that experience. As Einstein said, this delusion of reality is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. End of limitation. Something I've come to understand more and more in the last few years, and I'm learning more and more by the day. Consciousness, what I call the now, why I call it that, we'll come to, has an experience within this realm, this reality. And if we don't hold that connection, that awareness of who we are having an experience, then we get caught in the illusion of mind. Because consciousness, in the way that I'm using these words today, consciousness and mind are not the same thing. In fact, I don't even call it mind anymore. I call it the mind. Because we talk about my mind, her mind, his mind, their mind. No, it's the mind. And we are all different expressions of it. Because mind, that we think is us, is actually the means through which consciousness experiences this reality. Thought, it comes from mind. So much of what we call emotion comes from mind and connected levels. Consciousness is something very different. Consciousness is all possibility. It's all that is, has been, ever can be. It is everything and it is nothing. Because it's all possibility. It's like an ocean constantly flowing with the freedom to go where it wants. Mind, because everything is consciousness, but there's different states of consciousness. Mind is like frozen consciousness. It has great limitations of perception. But it's a wonderful vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality, unless we start falling for the idea that we are the vehicle and not that having the experience. And one of the key things that happens when we get caught, really caught in mind, is we get caught in what's called the intellect. And of course, we live in a mind-made world because we've so much lost touch with consciousness. And therefore, a mind-made world will worship mind-made creations. So what do? We worship and laud the intellect. Universities are not for consciousness, they are for intellect.